Thankful to the chairman for holding this hearing as the effects of COVID-19 pandemic continue to disrupt our nation's supply chain, leading to bottlenecks and, of course, delays and uncertainty. As consumer habits have shifted in response to the pandemic, we've seen a drastic increase of imports into the United States, which has been overwhelming our supply chain and exacerbating infrastructure issues. I strongly urge my colleagues to support the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act because it's a bipartisan legislation to help us provide significant and long overdue investments in our crumbling infrastructure. And as many of our witnesses have testified, this legislation will address years of underinvestment and allow us to meet the needs of the future. So I appreciate the president's leadership in developing the Build Back Better agenda to help grow our economy and create good paying jobs. Our witnesses have also pointed to specific legislation before this Congress that will address specific issues within the supply chain, and I look forward to hearing more about that. So, Mr. Durkin, my question, as my state of Iowa is our nation's second largest exporter of ag products, I'm concerned about how some foreign-owned shipping companies are essentially dictating trade. They're bringing in imports into our ports, but yet they're leaving with empty ships. Without our products being exported on them. This is very contrary to standard import-export trade. Can you elaborate on your testimony on how the Ocean Shipping Reform Act can address this problem and other solutions that we might act on here in Congress?
Yeah, two of the key components of that shipping reform bill. One is that it would put a limit on terms of the empty containers that are going back. There was always a portion of that did go back given the import-export imbalance. But that number was at around 10% prior to COVID, and now we're at 70%. So there clearly is an issue that has kind of escalated to a point where I call this obviously as a crisis. So, and then the second component of that is when those orders get rolled and we lose those bookings, as I mentioned, there's fees from demurrage fees and other excess charges that us as well as other companies have to handle. And I know that's a big component, a second component of the Shipping Reform Act that would help. And again, I can't emphasize enough how quickly, if we can get this thing, I know it has bipartisan support, how quickly we can get this bill passed and approved, and I think that would be a big help.
Thank you for that, and really appreciate that. Now, second question, Mr. Sampson, you noticed in your testimony that trucking industry needs about 80,000 more drivers to meet demand. I'll tell you, I always have Iowans in my office on this issue. We know these are tough jobs, but they're critical to our nation. So can you expand to us here what the industry is able to do to recruit workers so that we can better support those efforts?
We're understanding that there is an aging workforce. We're understanding that COVID had a strain on the industry, an industry that really showed up and kind of provided that they were heroes during the COVID pandemic. What we're trying to do is go out and recruit younger drivers. We're trying to diversify the workforce. We're trying to bring in those from the military. Women in trucking has been a big piece as well. That percentage continues to grow. Incentivized through monetary or benefits or flexibility. And so there's multiple things that we're trying to focus on to make sure that we get these drivers into the industry, but then we also keep them as well. We retain those employees as well.